Hello and welcome to How to Build a Theatre, a podcast charting the creation of a new theatre here in Brussels, Belgium, while looking at the wider theatre industry. My name is Edward Macmillan.
And my name is Phil Wilcox.
And welcome to the podcast. Woo! How are you doing?
Smooth, very smooth.
How are you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Ed. Yeah, it's we're at the back end of the middle back end of August. We've just come through a big old heat wave in the United Kingdom, and fortunately, in the last couple of days, it broke and we had some rain. Hurrah! But the ground was not ready for it, so we've also had some localized flooding, which is not so great. But yeah, no, it's been lovely. Thanks. Busy performing summer, and looking forward to a bit of time off later on. How about you? How's things going in Brussels?
Brussels in Bridgeland, yes. Well, the last podcast we recorded, Phil, was back in June, where we talked about the setback. And
Indeed, the in-person podcast. We were both in the same place.
And we are recovering from that still, so we are still on the search for suitable locations to do our activities, including finding more permanent home for ourselves. But we have also been doing a few. I mean, it's been summer, so not much has been happening. But we have managed to start doing a bit more of a corporate offering actually over the summer. So we were lucky enough back in June to get involved in a conference organised by a lobby organisation here, and we were providing some kind of scenes and a kind of artistic way of them expressing the content of the conference. And then we also partnered with the Migration Museum here, actually just yesterday, to film some scenes for them, using actors that we have locally to portray the kind of life of migrants in Europe. So yeah.
Fantastic, because I mean it seems harkening back now to early podcasts, early discussions about the bridge, that sort of community / corporate element of things was a key sort of cornerstone to your plan for it. I know that the sort of initial stages obviously involved a certain amount of outreach, participation work, getting in young people for the summer schools and that sort of stuff, and of course mounting the first shows, the first productions underneath the title of the bridge. But this is great that the third strand is really coming out now.
Yeah, and I think that we've, I guess because also our community side, the workshops are up and running, well, and we have a good kind of base of people who come to do them, and I think that now is the right time for us to really start speaking with corporate partners and other partners to see what we can do for them, what services we can provide, and in turn they can help to support this growing theatre for people who speak English here in Brussels. So yeah, it's a good time, and we're excited to kind of continue that as we get into the autumn and as people come back from summer.
Yeah, it's a funny time. I was thinking about this just the other day. This summer, certainly European summer for European arts. So there's a lot going on. There's summer festivals. It feels a little bit different to the run-of-the-mill autumn season, spring season. Summer season seems a little bit more kind of, I don't know, separate somehow. It operates slightly differently. It seems maybe shorter and more impactful. But also that with holidays and things like that, things don't tend to seem to move very quickly. So your emails get bounced back with out of office, and those plans that you want to make for autumn might take a little bit longer. But, you kind of got to say to yourself, rest assured that people are coming back, decisions are being made, and that work will carry on and things will carry on in autumn as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's summer. Things are very slow, especially here in Brussels. Everyone leaves the city. So, yeah, nothing's happening here at all.
So what about finding the new home then? Has that progressed since the last time we spoke?
Not really, Phil, unfortunately, no. I mean, it's summer. I mean, we have a few different potential leads, but we need to meet with these people, go and see the venues, and that all takes time, but also it needs the people to be here, and they've all been on their summer holidays. So, yes, I mean, tiny little steps, but nothing newsworthy, I guess.
Okay.
So that's the update, and I think we should maybe move on to our special guest of the week. So, I would like to very warmly welcome onto the episode our guest, Lara Staal. She is originally Dutch, and she's actually in Amsterdam right now. She is a Dutch theatre maker and curator. She's worked quite a lot here in Belgium as well. And I got to know her name through something called Stages, which we will get onto a little bit later. So, hello, Lara. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks.
How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. It's a weird. It's, as you say, it's a weird day also here. It's hot. It's heavy. It's yeah. I don't know. Not the best temperature, but not good. All good. All good.
What part of the house are you in there, Lara? Are you in somewhere with a bit of air conditioning?
No, I've heard that air conditioning is actually something you should really avoid. If I can already start to inform you, you probably know. But apparently it's only making cities hotter.
Well,
of course, true. Using a lot of electricity. So
what happens in London is we have 2 weeks of hot weather and everyone decries the fact that we don't have air conditioning in all of our flats. But in reality, like you say, it's just noise, more pollution and pushing out more heat.
It's not a sustainable solution, I'm afraid. No. Yeah.
And a hot topic for us.
But I know how difficult it is because my car is also without air conditioning and it's terrible on the road.
Yes.
With 2 little kids, so...
Oh, God.
So we normally start, Lara, by getting a bit of an idea of yourself personally, by some quick fire questions, if you're game for that. There's nothing personal. There's nothing too difficult, I hope. So here they are. Here they come. Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Oh, impossible to answer. Neither. Neither, actually.
Neither.
Wow.
Does that mean you're always awake or always asleep?
I think the best is like, a little bit after the morning, like not early morning, but like when I had a coffee and I had some time, I don't know, after 8:30 is the best moment.
I feel that. That's good. Do you have a favourite season, time of the year?
No.
No. I see a kindred spirit here. I often think if I was in your seat and someone was asking me these questions, I'd just be blank at the scream out, I'm sorry.
No, it's not really, but I'm these people that are too, I cannot think simple, so I will get into complexity, and I'm thinking like, how can you kind of feel that one season is better than the other? Like they only work because they're something else. So if it would be only summer all the time, or etc.
Okay, I'll change track slightly then. What's the first food that comes into your head?
Cheese.
There you go. Okay, fine. Do you listen to? Do you listen when you listen to music? Assuming that you do. Do you like listening to albums in full? Do you have playlists of random tracks, or do you just go for a certain artist?
I feel ashamed because I'm not really listening to music anymore since I have kids. It was already difficult to find time before, to be honest. So it will be just random radio and hoping that a good song is on. But I actually, there are many artists I like, and I'm also picky. So that's the other problem, that then half of the radio I just find shitty. So I should invest more, really.
Do you listen to podcasts?
No.
Oh.
Sorry. I've been part of many, and I think it's really great, and I want also something that's on my to-do list, because I think it's great in the car if you drive, and there are so many good ones, but it's time. I don't have time to go and dive into, because there's so many, so it's really something I should invest in as well.
2 more then. What's something new that's happening in your life at the moment? I think I may be able to guess the answer to this one.
A renovation of my house. Ooh. The entire roof was off. It's we're doing really something quite crazy. Me and my partner are doing it himself with a friend. They're doing a very good job, but it's chaotic, it's intense. It will be beautiful, but it will take ages before it's finished, I'm afraid.
Congratulations to you both for doing it yourselves. I hear quite a lot and I guess YouTube is our friend. How do I pull down this wall on YouTube? Amazing.
Well, this quickfire was quite eye-opening, actually. So there's some complexity in your thinking, Lara, which I really like. So maybe we should actually just start by you telling us who you are and what your relation is to theatre, how you got involved in theatre to begin with, and what you're up to now.
How did I get involved into theatre? Good question. I mean, as a child, probably. And then I wanted to do something with art, I guess. And then I studied theatre pedagogy, which is, I think, something quite Dutch. I mean, it's coming more and more, but let's say not so much as an actor or director, but more thinking about community theatre, children, youth, and then I worked a bit and I wanted more. I went to theatre science, theatre studies at university. So I kind of became a dramaturg, we could say. And I rolled into becoming a programmer at Theater Frascati in Amsterdam, which I did for 3 years, where I learned a lot. And there's much to say about. I'm very grateful for those years, but I also became very critical about the institution, about politics in theater, one of my, big interests. And I decided to start a freelance curator's trajectory within the performing arts, which was quite new, is still quite, it's really curating comes from visual arts, as you probably know, and theaters are used to do their programming themselves, either the dramaturg or the director. But the idea of someone traveling, doing projects is not so common, and it's also complex because of how the theater works. But I was lucky to start collaborating with Milo Rauw, who just took over the City Theater. Swiss director Milo Rauw taking over the City Theater of Ghent in Belgium. And because he was starting and because we knew each other already from before and we had a click, he was very open to kind of experiment with new formats and a kind of hybrid position that I have there as house artist, curator, thinking about policy, moderating, and making my own performances. So that's where I am. And next to that, I am also working at the Master of Theatre, an international master in Amsterdam called Das Theater. A beautiful place where people come from all over the world to kind of transition or deepen their practice as theatre makers. And sometimes moderating, writing, guest speaking, as a freelancer, let's say.
It's an amazingly broad career. Could you just unpack a couple of the terms that you just used there? So I don't think we've come across a programmer. The format of the podcast is that we interview someone from a different part of the industry, or quite broadly, theatre industry. I don't think we've come across a programmer before, and also then I think they're probably connected, leading to the role that you say is quite new of curator in theatre. Obviously, like you say, we understand that as sort of a visual arts curator, but programmer and curator, what would those roles entail, please?
At Frascati Theatre, the programmer was someone deciding which performances would be invited to place in a calendar, basically. But I was specifically busy with festival creation and then festival logics of regrouping certain performances around a topic that was shared, and then invite people from other domains, scientists, academics, writers, that would also have an interest in a certain topic to deepen that via lectures or workshops or conversations. And so there my interest in curating, because I started to make a distinction between, let's say, just filling up a calendar, like which performance makes sense and which, should it be a Monday or a Saturday, and is it at 7:30 or at 9? And what kind of audience do we have in mind, and all these kind of basic questions, to curating where the relationships between different artworks are central and are at the basis of how to make a selection or a choice, so that you offer a spectator on one evening different artworks that they can visit that somehow start to have a dialogue together. And so then curating becomes also content and influences the experience, because it's really creating a context, which is also tricky because many artists would say, like, don't contextualize my work, let me do that myself. And that kind of friction I find interesting, where the curator can really do an interesting job and a very bad one as well.
It's interesting because how do artists tend to respond to that then when you say, I've got a theme and your piece fits my theme, and they say, actually, I don't think it fits your theme.
Yeah, it's a very, it's also a terrible because it became very much a market. I think many theaters now feel that they need to position themselves socially, politically, work with topic and festivals. So I guess, I don't know, decolonial thinking and racism and sustainability and economics and all those topics are recycled constantly. So then, how to make a difference? Is it even important to be original? And how to deal with artists? It's terrible to become the decolonial artist. I've heard many friends and colleagues that also started to refuse, my work is not, you cannot simplify my work to decolonial thinking or the decolonial program. It also disarms in a way, it makes it, it kills it in a way. So I think, there's a lot of that, therefore it's a job that needs to be developed and talked about, and discourse needs to be built, like it happened in visual arts, because also there, as we know, it became a very also commercial position with a lot of power. And I think in theater there are similar, let's say, tensions that need to be, you need to be confronted with, and therefore we need to educate also and develop thinking around this. Because it can also be very beautiful. Because I think the idea of kind of the autonomous artists isolated on their island with their specific artistic universe can also be very limited, and can be very beautiful to actually acknowledge that there are other people busy with the same thing, and this can be layered and deepened, and we can be less alone.
Yeah, it's possibly a case of removing the ego, not in a bad sense, but sort of saying that, by curating, I'm not saying that I'm above you in understanding your artwork and I can put it with other these and I can see the bigger picture. It's simply posing the question, what does it feel like to put one artwork next to next to another one? What new questions does that pose? Yeah,
it's an idea that a community of people or collective can do more than someone alone, just like a work alone, and that we can learn from each other's works and they can talk to each other. And it can also, it's not like now we all have to follow, I don't know, because I'm also making work, so I know how terrible it is. Like, now we have a youth program and you made something with teenager, can we stuff it in because then we get subsidy? That's terrible, because you don't feel taken seriously and you feel someone's just ticking boxes. But if someone says, I'm really interested in the content of what you do, and I see the layers and stuff, and I think it makes sense to put it next to something else, then this can actually be a much richer experience also for me than just only traveling somewhere, showing the work, and go away again.
It sounds like it's an incredibly almost diplomatic position to be in. You have to you want to put these different artists together in some way, but you need to appeal to their ego, not offend, not belittle, not diminish. But there is a thematic around that, I guess. I don't know. And it comes into...
I'm not sure with the word diplomatic, because that sounds cold and rational. I would more go for, also daring to be ideological and transparent. It's not about, you don't need to be liked. Someone can be against your project. Just share. Lay your cards on the table. Share your interest, your research. Share your thoughts honestly about why you think things make sense, and then someone can also say, no, I don't think I fit, and that's fine. So again, it's I think it's more about artistic sensitivity, understanding someone's practice and the way people work, and also the market that got so perverse. And I also understand why people are irritated by some invitations they get. But just understanding that, and then making sure, being specific, how you, and that you are also knowing, that you invested in someone's work. You know, you're not just, I heard your title and all programmers love it. So please, I mean, so I think it's also about giving someone the feeling that you're taking their work seriously.
And this maybe is a little segue to what one of the topics we wanted to talk with you about, which was stages. Maybe Ed wants to pose a proper question to you, because I know he knows a bit more about it, and I know that you're not directly linked with it, but have been working along with it. It sounds like the model of what you're suggesting. Model's the wrong word because it implies something that's more formal than what you're suggesting, but is that it's curating stuff, putting things together, but without the having to impose some sort of growth on it. It's like you say, it's not because of profit, it's not because of fitting into the funding structure or something like that. It's just it is posing the question. It's putting things together without thinking of constant growth, which I know is the sort of is one of the reasons for stages taking the donut economics model. Ed, you can probably put this much better than I can, because I've watched the YouTube video explaining this when you emailed me about it, saying that Lara is coming on today. It does sound really, really interesting. Do you have a good question to pose to our guest?
I think maybe I would start by saying that I have long been a supporter of Kate Raworth's work. She's an economist from, I think, the University of Oxford, and she developed a theory called donut economics, which basically is a new way of thinking about economics in general, where we're not always visualizing constant growth, yes, as you were alluding to, Phil, but actually we look a bit more holistically, and we look within both the planetary boundaries, so that's your outer ring of the donut, and then the inner ring is the minimum that you need to survive. So we're living within the donut ring, and that's her kind of concept, and we should. Yes, exactly, and we shouldn't be looking for we shouldn't be visualizing economics as a graph that's ever increasing upwards, because that's dangerous for us. So then I was delighted when I saw that the European Theatre Convention and so a group of European theatres have won some European funding to launch a program called Stages, and Lara was there at the launch event for this project in Avignon earlier in summer. So maybe, Lara, you want to tell us what actually is Stages? Do you know the acronym? Because I don't. And yes, and tell us a little bit more about it.
Sustainable Theatre Alliance for a Green Environmental Shift, which is actually a much nicer title than Stages, because what does stages mean? I mean, of course, the stage can be, but then it feels very, I don't know, general. It doesn't stay, but I like the full title, but nobody uses it, of course. So it's a European collaboration with one partner abroad, Taiwan. It's 14 theater organizations that actually made a kind of sustainability agenda, where they're working with the UN goals, sustainability goals, and they applied for a budget to help them doing auto-analysis. So it's really looking at how theaters today are functioning and how they can be more sustainable. So that's just really what you think about. I mean, use of lights, touring, trucks, scenography, recycling, all those levels of greening the theater institution. But then it's also looking at social cohesion, inclusivity, diversity, that is very much for them tied to, and I think that's also the donut economy starting point is, as you said, more holistic. So it's not, you cannot have one without the other. So ecological ceiling and social foundation are connected. And then they have a series of projects. So one of them is two theater performances that they are working together with Katie Mitchell and Jean Bell, that are concepts that can travel without without having to move actors, scenography, trucks, stuff, lights, etc., technicians. So it's the idea that the concept can be restage in every local reality of every theater organization. We can speak about more about that if you want later. Then what else? So auto-analysis, rethinking touring, and I think the third element is more creating workshops, platforms, forums where there can be interaction with an audience around these topics. And that departs from the idea that imagination and artistic imagination should and can play a role if it comes to rethinking the world otherwise. So how can we use the theater, the power of the theater, to also inform, emancipate ourselves if it comes to a more sustainable future?
And we should probably say that Théâtre de Liège and also NT Ghent are partners in this project, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, of course, and that's indeed the reason why I got involved, because I'm, as said, one of the house artists of NT Ghent. And Liège and Ghent, both two cities in Belgium that are part of the French side and the Flemish side. So there's also, of course, historically some tensions between those areas. Decided, it would be important and an important gesture for the opening of the Stages program to collaborate and to have really the opening weekend in both cities. And they asked me to curate one of the first forum that will happen in both cities. Which is entitled Despair is Too Easy. So that's the forum that I'm organizing, and that's why I was also invited at Avignon for the launch of this Stages project to kind of give an intervention or a short lecture from my perspective. And I will also be part of the what they call laboratories, where scientists and artists are mixed up together, spend time to think together how, let's say, content and imagination can be reinforcing each other and reach an audience.
That's something that when I was reading up on Stages and the sort of approach that they're taking, that I found quite interesting. The idea of scientists being involved in the process. Is that to help with this auto-analysis, this self-analysis of the way that people create and move theatre about the world, or is it something deeper than that? I thought that was quite an interesting idea to bring scientists into the game, rather than say engineers. Or I suppose maybe there's an aspect of science.
Yeah, so I hope I can answer this question completely, because again, I'm not a full expert in how the application came into being and what the thinking, especially the auto-analysis part, is a bit further from my practice. I mean, in the beginning, I had to figure out with Ghent who would do what, and I was also quite clear in that my strength, I think, is more in the reflection part and in the artistic thinking, and less in the, okay, how are we going to deal with everything we throw away, or recycling, or all these kind of more concrete elements that are very important, but that would be less of my expertise. I don't think scientists are involved at that stage, but I think the auto-analysis is very much tied to the Green Book, and that comes from someone we could call, I don't know if we should call him a scientist, but let's say an academic. That was very important. Now his name doesn't come into mind, but I can look him up for you. And so I think in the thinking of what a theater can do to understand what their how do you say, footprint, right? Yeah, ecological footprint is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it comes very much from the Green Book.
I was going to say we had Andrew Wiley, wasn't it, Ed, from the Theatre Green Book?
Exactly, thank you.
And as a guest on the podcast, actually, it was a few months ago, and it was really interesting.
So I think his thinking has been very influential for this auto-analysis.
I'm glad that that's linked up. I don't remember if we asked him this, but do you think that this is a question for you, Ed, as well? Actually, I guess I'm just spitballing here. Do you think that touring is in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of our feedback into negative feedback into the environment, is touring the biggest element of our negative carbon footprint?
So I actually went to so there's a bank here called Triodos Bank, and they organised with a NGO called Promethea here a conference on greening theatre here in Brussels fairly recently, and they had a lady from Paris who had done a lot of research. Her organisation had done a lot of research on the theatre or the wider cultural industry in France and its carbon footprint. And actually, the biggest carbon footprint that they identified was actually the audience travelling to come to the productions. Yeah. But you can't really avoid that, I think. I don't know.
No.
I mean, I think it's important to kind of hook up with this very concrete questionnaires, because I think we presume a lot. So I think it makes sense to really go through and look at an analysis, make analysis. But I think you can but then it just requires more in-depth research and collaboration. But you could, of course, say that you hook up with, I don't know, a transport company, and that you say, you know, we have buses or whatever, it's for free, or we try to get people not in their cars but to travel via train because you can get a discount when you have whatever. I think there are creative solutions already on that level. Then of course we should not ban traveling completely, because it makes sense also that we exchange between cities and cultures and countries. It just needs to be more balanced.
But this the project you said that they're putting together, so you didn't mention their names, and I've now not got the email. They're putting together a production which is going to be Katie and Jerome putting together a production which is essentially going to tour but not going to tour. So the idea that there's nothing physical being transferred between countries, I assume, apart from maybe a director and a producer, you know, a small team of people.
Not even. No, that's
even
the interesting
right.
part. The interesting part is that Katie Mitchell developed a concept with a text, and the scenario travels, but then a local director picks it up, and it has been also set up in a way that the local director gets a little bit of freedom also to kind of make their own interpretation, and they look for local participants to deal with. But there are some rules. So one of it is that, for example, the principal character needs to be a black woman or a woman of color.
Mm-hmm. And what in terms of then how much control? Because obviously you could say, well, I've written this piece of theatre and then send it out with free rights and to encourage people to do it all over the world. What other, do you know, putting you on the spot slightly, what other restrictions are there, do you know, to give that, I don't know, quality control element, you know, to make sure that it is the same production that is essentially touring without touring? Have they put other sort of structures into place?
Good point. I'm not aware, actually. I don't know. No. I don't know. I do feel that there has been some tensions already around this. So local artists thinking, why? I mean, I'm now finally invited to make a piece, but I need to do Katie Mitchell's piece, and I would be very happy to do my own. So why should I go for this kind of famous, international renowned artist piece? So I think there has been, and then context where if we look at positions that are oppressed or marginalized, also historically, maybe it's not a person of color, but it could be a Roma person in Hungary, or it could be so. And I think in Taiwan also they worked with the indigenous community, and I think some partners are handling it a bit more cleverly and thinking really of what makes sense in our context, and not just adopting whatever has been said from above, but to really check, okay, so how can I translate and mediate certain tensions, topics, friction in this local context that is, of course, specific.
Which, of course, I guess is fine as long as they're not flying in set and costume from all over the rest of the world. It still sits within the concept of what they're trying to achieve,
I'd like to go back, if I may, just to, since it's a bit forward-looking, to the conferences that you're organising. So maybe just tell us also just the logistical details, the when and where, and who are they for, and what are kind of you expecting, what are you thinking about these at the moment?
So I need to even look up the dates. It's terrible because I'm apparently so much in holiday mode. So it's beginning of November. I will come with the dates in a moment. It's called Despair is Too Easy. It's a forum that invites artists, scientists and activists as guest speakers, contributors. It is a performative conference. That's something I've been developing for already, I think, the last 10 years maybe. I did a whole series in Ghent also around specific values, where we are creating kind of arenas with audience and guest speakers, creating space for exchange and debate and discussion, where we try not to make a very clear cut between theory and imaginary, or poetry and information, you could say, but to kind of depart from the idea that they inform each other, and that even a politician would use performative strategies. If it comes to rhetorics, for example, we all use metaphors, we all use rhythm, jokes, charms, which is actually very close to the work of an actor. So I'm really interested in bringing speech acts together, and some will stay closer to documentary material, information theory, and some will be maybe much more artistic, poetic, even rap or whatever, music. But actually they inform each other very much, and they're not, and I think if it comes to horizon and future, it's important to also kind of push what we now consider as information or knowledge. So this conference is a bit in the same line. We don't have, also a bit suffering from the same thing you were saying of summer, and so we don't have the list of people ready yet completely. But there will be artists working around ecology, sustainability, showing excerpts from works. We're very much busy with music, or artists that are working with concert forms, and then activists and academics that will share their thinking about sustainability. And the kind of bigger question behind it is very much about how come that although we're experts of imaginary words, images, texts, we are still not able to really mobilize people if it comes to climate.
Very nice. And where is this taking place?
In Liège and in Ghent, in the city theaters. So it's gonna be the weekend of 5th and 7th of November, Friday and Saturday, I think. Correction, 4th and 6th of November.
And maybe, do you have an opinion on why theatre has not been able to mobilize people on the sustainability issue?
How come we haven't been able to mobilize yet? Your question?
Yeah, why do you think that is? What's missing? What's lacking in the theatre world?
It's a difficult question that you can answer on several levels, because I think it's also a question that goes beyond theater. If we're looking at, NGOs or Greenpeace or whatever, I think there has been several strategies. So, for example, for a long time it was showing the horrors, right, of climate, and then realizing that this is actually making us more numb than it's activating us. So I think all kinds of waves of also trying and finding new strategies. And then I think because we're in a media era, of course, theater is not the most quick or efficient. So it should not, I think if we think about theater, it's not about numbers of reaching out. So that's not something we should demand from ourselves, because that's just not how we are functioning. So it's more about, I think, a deeper experience that is also about commitment of time. You go to a theater, you sit until it's finished. Normally you don't get up before. So it's really committing to a certain work that you're trusting and trying to understand. And it's live, which is then, I think, very important, because so much is, we're doing a podcast now and we're on Zoom and we come from a pandemic and we're looking at Netflix and all those things. So the slowness and the inefficiency of going to a theater, biking, taking the car, whatever, sitting there with other people, I think that hassle is actually very important, because it's one of the few places that we're still doing that. So what does it mean to be a temporary collective in the here and now, watching something, hopefully discussing it afterwards?
In in the works that you create yourself, do you find yourself tempted to, or do you actually consciously be quite direct with an audience about the issues that you want to discuss, be they environmental or gender politics is a terrible term, social politics, the way that people interact. Are you quite hard hitting on that, or do you find that a sort of more subtle experience this change minds approach is your sort of voice?
Yeah, again, that's so subjective, isn't it? Because I mean, reading the reviews of the last performance I made in the Belgium context, many critics were very critical because they thought they would really literally say it never becomes real theater, because they feel it's too theoretic, it's too straightforward, it's too much lecturing. Whereas I thought it was super poetic and super performative. So I guess we all have very different, and that's also why I feel that the performative is not only linked to the theater or the black box, but theaters everywhere, if you ask me. I mean, the whole world is performative, and we're performing roles all the time, and that's what makes it so interesting. And going into the black box for me is more kind of a way of excerpting a slice of reality and kind of investigating it on a deeper level. So I don't feel this urge of, now it needs to be poetic and layered and metaphors, and here we come to, I don't know, find aesthetics and poetry. Yeah, there is a lot of poetry, but there's a lot of poetry in the real world also. So that probably in the eyes of others would make me a more kind of hardcore, I don't know, if I should say political, of kind of theater documentary, or theater as knowledge exchange. But I find, I mean, the last piece was called Dissident, and it was made with 5 teenagers, so-called problem kids in secondary school. And they were lecturing in 12 very short lessons the audience about what's wrong with the school system. And this was this kind of idea of power reverse, where the problem kids that are normally taught to are the teachers of an adult audience, explaining what's wrong with our educational system. I thought there was incredibly a lot of poetry in that, and a lot of beauty also.
Well, you talk to the great documentary or see programs about how the great documentary makers make their documentaries, and it's via story, isn't it? Even though they're working with non-acted real interactions, real interviews with real people, filming real situations, actually they know to make the most powerful TV program, piece of theatre, whatever they're putting together, podcast, TED Talk, it's got to run the arc of a story, actually, and that's where the world of theatre comes into play.
The real is being performed all the time, and we are also performing it now. So we are unconscious or consciously constantly aware of how we use our voice, which kind of words we're creating realities while we're. So I think if you look at, I don't know, reality or politics, there's just a very strong, apparently that reality wins over others, but it's still subjective, it's still performed, it's still designed in the way.
100% agree with you, Lara. Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps just to Phil, I'm not sure whether you have any further questions, but I just wanted to have a quick look into the future for you, Lara, and just a quick update on what you've got planned for this coming season, or the next, what your big exciting moments might be, apart from the conference, of course.
Yeah, so there's the conference in the beginning of November, and then there will be a reprise. So we will tour it again, Dissident, because we suffered a bit also from the pandemic. So we will have a little tour, and then I'm preparing my next project that will happen in a prison, probably the prison of Ghent, where the performance will happen inside a prison. And it's kind of a little bit of the same logic of working with prisoners about and around the current prison system, kind of historically analyze it, where it comes from, but also what it produces, what is the role of isolation, disciplination, how are we critical about that, what could be alternatives, and how are people that are experiencing this kind of confinement themselves thinking about that. Those are, I guess, the main focuses for the coming period.
Interesting project.
Really, really. So Lara, thank you very much for coming on today. It was really great to yes, hear about the sustainability issues, but also your work as well, and to really, I mean, I do agree, theatre is everywhere, it's all around us, and there is theatre and poetry everywhere, and I really, really appreciate that you are bringing that to other people and bringing that to the stages. So anyway, thank you for coming on, and thank you, Phil, for being here as well.
Pleasure. See you next time.
Thank you.
See you next time. Sorry, Phil, did you have another question?
No, it wasn't. No. I was just saying, as the when you're Lara, you're talking about the piece in the prison. There's a couple of initiatives over in London actually that do quite a lot of work in prisons. There's Pimlico Opera